In school, students are sometimes asked to imagine the perspective of a given character in a book. But a number of teachers and students believe a recent question on the MCAS, the state standardized testing, went too far. Mary Najimy, president of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, joined me to share the union's perspective on the matter.
We had some teachers who went to great risk to reach out to the MTA and to the Boston Teachers Union to explain that their students, who also went through great risk to talk about what was on the test, were explaining there was a question that traumatized them, and the teachers began to explore what that question was, and then they started reaching out. They felt, despite the risk to their licensure, to retaliation, they felt they couldn't stay silent anymore.
And I'll explain, when you say great risk, it's because students who take the MCAS are prohibited from talking about the questions on the test.
That's right.
They can fail, they can be forced to retake the test or not receive their diploma.
Right.
And then teachers, as you explained, will be penalized as well.
That's
but
right.
So teachers and students went ahead and sort of steeled themselves and talked about it. As I understand it, the State Department of Education has declined to release the actual text of that question. Is that still correct?
Well, here's the good news. When you create a public firestorm and raise the ire of the community, and through the Massachusetts Teachers Association, the American Federation of Teachers, and the Boston Teachers Union, we shined the light on this, and that really forced the department to release the test question and the passage itself. And honestly, it was as bad as we had heard it described by the students. The question itself, so you have a crucial text of this day that explains the brutality of slavery and the risks that people will put themselves through for liberation of themselves or the other.
You're referring to the Colson Whitehead book,
This
right?
is the Colson Whitehead book, that's right. And so a small passage was used, and then the students were actually asked to put themselves in the shoes of the white woman who harbored racist notions and write a journal entry about how the story would be told differently from her point of view.
And so what did you hear from students who reported things to their teachers about how they reacted to being asked to inhabit that perspective?
That's right. Students said it created a moral dilemma. White students felt it was a moral dilemma because they had to embody a racist point of view. Students of color were traumatized by it because they recognized they had to write hateful things about a character who ultimately represented themselves. And so many of the students were asking, is it true that the more racist I write, the better score that I get? That was a real dilemma for students.
And as I understand it, the MTA has asked the Board of Education not to score any test that included that question that students have already taken. Board of Education has said they won't score that individual question, but you want to push for more. Why?
That's right. Well, we believe, and the students also named this themselves, that if you had to sit through a traumatic experience, those feelings stay with you, and then you had to finish the rest of the test. So the entire test for those students will be skewed, and by any kind of norm referenced standardized test, if you have one set of test questions that are skewed and invalid, the entire test for all of the rest of the test takers becomes skewed and therefore invalid. But the Department of Education will not go that far. They won't do the right thing.
The MTA definitely thinks that they should.
We do, and what they decided instead, so we testified at the Board of Education, the last meeting about a month ago, and I really called them out that not only would they refuse to take responsibility for this question making to it on the test, but they scratched their heads and they shifted the blame. And then what was even more egregious was they decided to bring an outsider in to study the validity of the test and if it really did have an emotional impact on the students. They refused to listen to the voice of the students, who are they themselves saying this had an emotional impact on me. They refused to see the students as the experts who can tell about the impact. They need an outside study.
Well, and as I understand it, the way that the structure of the MCAS test is laid out at this point is there's a committee that agrees what questions are on the test, and then there are some subcommittees that look at issues of race and bias. Does the MTA see a need to change that system if a question like this is still getting to a test?
So we need to zoom out even broader than that. The MTA is advocating for the end to high stakes testing. What people don't understand is that standardized testing grew out of the eugenics movement. It was a tool that was designed to try to validate a racist notion that white people were intellectually superior to who we called Negroes at the time. So in other words, the standardized test is a remnant of that movement. The test itself creates a racial hierarchy. White children always score at the top. Students of color and English language learners always score at the bottom. So it is an invalid test. It is designed to create an achievement gap, and yet the Department of Education is using it to solve an achievement gap. You cannot use a tool that creates an achievement gap to solve an achievement gap.
What would you, if you were successful in having that standardized test be removed, what would you put in its place, or how would you then sort of score or help students understand where they place?
So there are multiple ways to measure student progress and student learning. First of all, it goes right back to the curriculum. Another part of the problem with high-stakes testing and the Common Core national standards are they've completely narrowed the curriculum itself to focus on what it measures as being college and career ready. What it has also done is it has narrowed the curriculum, and it has pushed out what used to be a vibrant multicultural education movement. So we need more culturally relevant curriculum and culturally relevant teaching practices. For example, we need to be using call and response. We need to teach rap and hip hop as a genre, so that our students of color have that as a tool to use to express what they know and how they're learning. Those kinds of things cannot be measured with a standardized instrument. And the other thing we have to do is trust teachers. Every interaction that an educator has with a child is a moment for assessment, whether it's a conversation about their work or listening to them talk to each other or reading their work. Those are the ways that educators really know minute by minute how their students are responding to the curriculum, who's ready to excel, who hasn't gotten it yet and needs more time.
I want to have a circle back to something we discussed at the beginning of the conversation, which is that piece that students and teachers right now are penalized for speaking out. Right. In the short term, while this test still is in place, how would you have that maybe change? Do you think that that's an appropriate framework right now?
So the second thing that we called for when we found out about this racially offensive question was not only should all students be held harmless this year on the English language arts, but we need to drop what we call the gag order. The educators have to date proven that they are the only responsible party in all of this. We have to be responsible for protecting our students, and students have to be able to have the freedom to say there was an offensive question on the test. Now, that doesn't mean that they should be talking about the test and posting online to give students an opportunity to cheat.
I was going to say, because there is a reason to remain quiet, right? It is to make sure that everyone has a fair chance and isn't cheating.
Right, but when you forbid students in all ways about talking about an experience, that really shows the failure of the test.
I just want to ask one broad question. I know that you're a big advocate of Western Massachusetts. You grew up in the Berkshires. Cultural competency is something that gets talked about, especially, I think, in Western Massachusetts. We're a less culturally diverse region than maybe the eastern part of the state. How would you grade Western schools in Western Massachusetts on this concept of cultural competency?
Well, I wouldn't say it's just Western Massachusetts. It's the entire country. So cultural competency has been forced out by standardized testing and by high-stakes testing, and we're just beginning to come back into a movement to bring it back in. But I have to tell you, I grew up in Pittsfield. I loved my teachers. My father was an educator. He was well admired. I was well liked. I had many friends, but I'm Arab American. And when we grew up, the only curriculum that I had was Dick and Jane, and that was the Basil Reader. It was a white family who was proper and quiet, and it didn't at all represent my life, my culture. We were big and loud, and you put a whole family together in a room, and you can't hear each other talking over each other. So from a long time ago, I also felt invisible in the curriculum. I think we are at a defining moment where educators have to start making the decision, and this is what you might hear of this Red for Ed movement, which is sweeping the country. It's educators through their teachers' unions who are fighting to push back against underfunded schools, high-stakes testing, the narrowing of curriculum, so that we can bring in culturally relevant curriculum and teaching practices.